Hi everybody, welcome back to the headquarters of the ferrypilot.com with my lovely wallpaper. Woo! Uh, this is second edition of questions and answers Q&A from you guys to me. And I'm going to get right to it. I have a couple of good ones this time, and I enjoyed reading them, and I enjoyed all of them. I'm not going to get to all the questions that were sent to me. Some of them also are kind of the same, and I'm going to touch on all of them at the same answer, but I'll try to get through as many as I can. So, without further ado, this one's from Mr. Mike Lambert. Asked an excellent question. He asked, "I have a question. When you go get a ferry flying job flying an aircraft you've never flown before, do you always get a checkout or at the very least an orientation flight?" Great question. Excellent question. At the moment, I have experience in between 40 and 50 different kinds of general aviation aircraft. Every now and then, I do have an airplane I haven't flown before. Luckily, I have access to many aircraft on my field. If it's an airplane I haven't flown before, I'll see if it's based on my airport. If it is, I'll speak with the owner. Maybe I'll go up with a flight with the owner of the airplane on my field before I go out to ferry the airplane. Another thing I do, for example, the first time I had to ferry a Cirrus aircraft, I'd never flown before. This is years ago, I think. It was one of my second or third ferry flights. I actually went to a school in my area that had a Cirrus. I rented it, and I got checked out. Sometimes there'll be an aircraft that I haven't flown before, and I don't have the option to do an orientation flight on it. So what I do in that situation is I read the POH very carefully. I go through it, all the little details. I read the system descriptions, and I make a little cheat sheet for myself of the power settings, speeds, and all that, and I tape that on the cockpit in front of me while flying. And then during that first leg, I'm treating that aircraft. I mean, I always treat it with respect, but I fly it very carefully in that first leg until I get more comfortable with it. And then I can, I guess feel more comfortable just flying the airplane. So I hope that answers your question, Mike. Thanks for sending it to me. And now we're going to move on to other questions sent out from you guys. And I'm clicking and I'm clicking and I'm looking. Where is it? Here we go. Next question's from one of you guys here. Have I ever accompanied a new owner on a ferry flight? That question's coming from Arthur Gunn. And again, have I ever accompanied an owner on a ferry flight? Yes, I have. I do it quite often, actually. It's more that the owner accompanies me on the ferry flight. They ask permission to come on the ferry flight. And I think it's funny because it's their airplane. You don't need my permission to fly their airplane. I've had owners accompany me on domestic trips, little small hops, and I've had them come over the Atlantic with me. The Cirrus I took over to Spain this past year, or the Cessna 207 that we took to Israel, the Pilatus PC-12 back in summer of 2012. The owner came with me as well, and I enjoy it. People come, I have someone to talk to, which is great, and they get to see exactly what all the little nitty-gritty stuff that's behind the scenes on ferrying, and they see the whole process, and I get to make friends all over the place. So yes, I have accompanied people, the new owners, on their planes, and also it's great for them because they get to discover their plane. They get to know their plane before they actually have it in hand to fly themselves. Also, I am a flight instructor as well, so a lot of times flying with me will satisfy a lot of their insurance requirements for their so they can fly their plane. Let's see, what's next question? Sent by Christopher Grimes. I hope it's Grimes. Would you ever ferry a plane in IMC your first time flying it? As a general rule, I don't trust the plane I'm flying, at least until I've had the opportunity to check it out or something like that. I try to avoid flying the first leg in IMC. And people who don't know, IMC means Instrument Meteorological Conditions. That means flying in clouds, fog, low visibility. I try to avoid it. However, if the plane is inspected, has all the all the sign-offs in the maintenance logs, if all the instruments test correctly on the ground, then I'm not going to delay a flight just because it's IMC outside. So in that situation, of course, I proceed with extreme caution, but I'll still go and get the job done. But again, to sum up, do I ever fly a plane in IMC first time flying it? I try to avoid it if I can. If I can't, I make the most of it. Last question here. Going back to Andrew Weckerly, who seems to be asking great questions. Thank you, Andrew. Have you said no to a ferry flight, and if so, why? Yes, I have. I've said no to a few of them. I would say I turned down a ferry flight, I would say once a month, something like that. But it's normally because of scheduling issues, or it's from I don't feel qualified enough for that aircraft. For example, I get called to fly, a Piaggio Avanti. I'm not certified to fly a Piaggio Avanti. What I do is then I don't just turn them away. I provide a solution for them. I've flat out turned down 3 aircraft come to mind. Just last week I turned down an extra 300. I am tailwheel endorsed, but I'm not going to touch an extra 300. That, if people don't know, an extra 300 is an aerobatic aircraft, which is very, very sensitive, and I didn't feel that flying it for the first time by myself would be in the best interest of the client. I turned down a Yak, to fly a Yak 52. Also for some of that reason of I've never flown a Yak before. It's a historical aircraft, and I just didn't want to be the one who broke it. Not that I'm saying I would break it, but I felt that I need to fly with someone before I could take that airplane, and since I didn't have the experience, I turned them down. There's only been one occasion that I've actually gone out to an airplane, looked it over, and said no. This was in Florida, back early summer, I want to say spring of last year, where I flew down to Florida. I was time building in a Baron. I was supposed to take a Baron to Brazil originally. It never went through, but people asked. I'd never flown a Baron before. There's a Baron on my airport. I hooked up with the owner of the Baron, and we flew, so I built some experience and time in the Baron so that I could fly that one to Brazil. So I flew the Baron down to Florida with this gentleman, and we went to go see an aircraft. And the aircraft, I don't want to give up too many details on it, but it was a kit plane. And I'm not adverse to flying kit planes, but I do go over them with a fine-tooth comb. I went to go see it, and I went to inspect it, and whenever I go to a new aircraft, I try to talk to the maintenance guys who worked on it and whatnot. And there were so many things that I felt were shady. And this kit plane was supposed to go overseas. I was supposed to take it across the Atlantic. It had an automotive engine conversion, so it wasn't an aviation engine originally. They converted it, and they threw a prop on it that looked very sketchy. And every person I spoke with said that they wouldn't trust the aircraft, they wouldn't trust the airplane, they wouldn't trust it, and all these little flags come up, and it just looked. I actually had the feeling that if I fly this airplane, there's a good chance I'm going to die in this airplane. I've never had that feeling before on any other plane that I've been to go ferry. I've seen planes and I go, yeesh. I've had that before. I've had planes where I look at them like, oh dear, this is going to be a long trip. But this one specifically scared me. So I called up the client and I voiced my concerns very nicely, and he was understanding. He knew that he had a out of the ordinary setup, I guess you could say. But that is the only time I've actually been out to an airplane and flat out said, no, I'm not going to fly it. Those were all of the questions I got. I'll throw one more in for Mr. Rex Cox. He says, just curious, what are the minimum qualifications to ferry planes in the United States? I would refer you to my previous Q&A video where I talked about how to become a ferry pilot. But as far as qualifications, there are no set qualifications. The regulations never talk about ferry pilot. Any person with a commercial license can ferry an airplane. But I'm not sure if a brand new commercial pilot really has the level of experience, discipline, and maturity as a pilot to successfully complete, let's say, a transatlantic trip or an international flight down to Central South America, stuff like that. So that's... I hope that answered your question, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. If you enjoyed it, like all the other ones, please share it, like it, promote it. I'm really trying to get this page up and running. There will be more question and answer videos. If you have more questions, post them in response to this video. And maybe I'll get to you next time. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.